Thank you. Good to know. All right, friends. Well, I want to Jacob. Oh, well, first I want to say thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here today to address what do we call you guys? The Brandeis group? Brandeis National Committee. Thank you very Middlesex County. Thank you very much. And I feel like we could have our congregational meeting right now. So I'm really happy to see everyone from our synagogue and everyone from the community joining us today. And I want to say a special thank you to Judy Scher and Audrey Whitman for helping to put together today's meeting. Thank you both very much. And as Judy mentioned, I'd like to begin now with a prayer for Jacob, a prayer of healing. So let me offer that now. Mishaberach, Avotenu, Vimotenu, Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, who Yivarech et Acholim. The one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Send your healing power to Jacob. Provide him with a refuah shlema, complete recovery, together with all those in need, as we say. And as Judy also mentioned, it was a very important day on Sunday when the 3 hostages returned to their homes in Israel after over 470 plus days captivity in Gaza. We're so grateful that those 3 have returned home safely. From what I am reading, are in good health and reunited with their families, and very grateful to be home. That is very, very important. I continue to hope and pray that all of the hostages will return home safely. There are still close to 100 hostages being held in the Gaza Strip. We don't know how many are still alive. We don't know what their health is, but we're praying for all of them. You know, at our synagogue, we pray for the hostages every Friday night with a special prayer. And we set aside a seat in our sanctuary that's has a picture of some of the hostages and a blue ribbon. To remind us that at the homes of the hostages, their families, they're missing, a seat is empty while they're being held in Gaza. So at this time, I'm going to offer a prayer for the hostages. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu. God and God of our fathers and mothers. Eloheinu, our God, the one who raised Joseph up from the pit, be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. Send complete rescue and full redemption to those held captive. Strengthen their spirit and bring them our prayers that they be protected from all harm. Grant strength to the Israel Defense Forces, that they may secure freedom for the captives. Watch over those who are held in bondage. Let them be set free. As was written by the psalmist, they'll call upon me and I will answer them. I will be with them in distress. Will rescue them and save them. All right. So should I change the topic again, Judy?
Be my guest.
I have the floor, you know. So as Judy said, I planned to talk about 3 biblical Jewish women. Originally, I was going to talk about Miriam, Deborah, and Esther, important Jewish women in our history. And then, as I began to research, I came across a teaching in the Talmud, which was very interesting. And it says that there were 7 female prophets in Jewish history. 7 prophetesses. That's the only time I'm going to say that word today. So you can see here on the slide, the rabbis taught 48 prophets and 7 prophetesses prophesied to Israel. And they neither took away from nor added unto what is written in the Torah, except for the reading of the Megillah. Now you notice right away, what do you notice the problem in that quote already? 48 men and only 7 women, right? What else is new? What else is new? Fair enough. But for the Talmud to acknowledge that there were 7 women in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, were prophets. Important. And then the Gemara from the Talmud goes on and says, 7 prophetesses were these: Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Anna, Abigail, Huldah, Esther. On there, I just for fun, I put a nice picture there. Esther piece is a work of art It was created by a gentleman named Edward Long. He was a British artist from the 19th century, who did historical works and the biblical figures and scenes. So just to give you an idea of, who knows, Esther might have looked like that. So there's Queen Esther. Now, before we dig in to Miriam, oh, and by the way, I was going to do all three, or I could do all seven, but then you'd have to have dinner. So dinner ready for us tonight. So as I was researching into Miriam, I was really intrigued by her, and we'll come back to her in a minute. But first, let's see what we know. What do we know about Sarah? What do we know about Sarah? Wife of Abraham, first. Say again. Correct. Yeah, she was 90. He was 99. That's okay. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So we have Sarah, the first Jewish woman. She was the first Jewish woman. Abraham was the first Jewish man. She was the first Jewish woman. Okay. Next we have Miriam. We're going to go into her in depth, so we're going to hold on Miriam for a second. All right. What do you know about Deborah? Anybody know anything about Deborah? Yes. She was a judge. That's correct. There's a book known as the Book of Judges. It follows after the Torah, and she was a judge and a prophet, a female prophet, who led the Israelites to victory over the Canaanites. In the Book of Judges, she's the only female judge recorded. All the remaining judges were men. Okay? All right. If you know Huldah, I'm going to buy you a free cookie. Anybody know her? Huldah is a female prophet who encouraged King Josiah to renovate the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Decorate, good decorate. Yeah, well, when they say renovate, that means get rid of all the statues of idols and make it a good temple as opposed to yes. But I like that. Now, how about Hannah? Anybody know anything about Hannah? Hannah, again, nice name. What? There you go. Hannah's your granddaughter. Perfect. She must be a time traveler. Impressive. Hannah was the mother of Samuel the prophet. There are two books of Samuel. Hannah was Samuel's mother, and she was unable to give birth, and she was barren. And she went to the temple. She went to pray. Her prayer was so sincere and heartfelt. She was praying, and her lips were moving, but no sound was coming out of her mouth because she was really distressed. She was hurting. And the priest Eli saw her, came to her, Eli, and said, "Are you drunk?" Because he saw this woman with her lips moving and nothing coming out. And she said, "No, I'm praying to God, to give me a son." And he immediately realized her piety, and she gave birth to the prophet Samuel. So she's a model for us of power of prayer and of really putting our hearts. That was Hannah. Okay, and Abigail. Abigail was the wife of King David, also known as a prophetess. And I like that name. That's my daughter's middle name. Daughter's Naomi Abigail. All right. And of course, Queen Esther. We all know Queen Esther from Purim and all of her exploits and her great courage going before the king and saving her people because she could have been killed. So that's a little bit about it. So Miriam, well, we're going to focus on Miriam now. She is perhaps the most well-known woman in the Torah. And she plays an important role in the story of the Exodus, helping baby Moses, celebrating the splitting of the Reed Sea, and she was a bit of a rebel herself. She kind of had a big mouth. I'll get to that later. So let's take a look a little bit about her life and what we can learn from her. All right. This is the first time we meet Miriam. Read it out for us here. She, of course, the Pharaoh had the decree that all baby boys had to be thrown into the Nile River. And so Moses' parents put him in the basket. And this is what we read. When she couldn't hide him no longer, that's Moses' mom, she got a wicker basket for him and caulked it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child into it and placed it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. And his sister stationed herself at a distance to learn what would befall him. Who's his sister? Miriam. Miriam is his sister. You can see in this graphic. So Moses is, by the way, this is not some famous artist. I don't know who this is, but I liked it, so I put it up. So you can see in this picture here that the baby Moses was in the basket. And then a slave, one of the Pharaoh's daughter's slave girl saw the basket. So that's her there standing by the basket. She saw the baby and gave it to Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter knew it was a Hebrew child. How did Pharaoh's daughter know that? Circumcision, right? The baby was circumcised. There's a very famous rabbinic teaching that Judaism, we were enslaved for 400 years in Egypt. Judaism continued because of three things. Because we kept our Hebrew names, kept circumcision, and what was the third one? I have to look at. I can't remember what we kept the Hebrew language. Kept the Hebrew language. Those were the three things that kept our people going. Anyway, so in this depiction here, you have the baby Moses, who, saved by the Pharaoh's daughter, and who's in the reeds there? That's Miriam. Miriam's watching, and do you know what she does after she sees this? She does a little setup. She goes to Pharaoh's daughter and says, well, this child is a Hebrew child. Can I find someone to feed the child, to be the suckle the child? And the Pharaoh's daughter said yes. So Moses was raised by his mother and the Pharaoh's daughter. He was raised by his mother and the Pharaoh's daughter, but Miriam made that happen and made sure he could be with his mother. If you want to know more about Moses' upbringing, see the movie The Prince of Egypt. That's it. Good movie. It's very accurate. So what do we learn about Miriam so far? We learn that she is caring. She obviously, loves her family. She's clever, and she takes action to help. All right, let's keep going. All right. So the story of the Exodus goes on. The next time. Oh, and I forgot something very important about this last slide. Hold on one second. Oh no, it's here. That's where I want to be. Okay, good. So the story of the Exodus goes on. The next time we see Miriam is after we escape from Egypt. Of course, we arrive at what's the name of the sea that we arrived at? I know you know, Judy. You're 100% right. That's right. Ask and you answer. It's the Sea of Reeds. What do most people think it is? Red Sea. It actually says in the Torah, it says the Sea of Reeds, Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds. We arrive at the Sea of Reeds, and we've got the Pharaoh's army behind us, and we've got the sea in front of us, and Moses raises his staff, and God splits the Reed Sea, and we go through to safety. And when we make it through to safety, afterwards, Moses and the Israelites sing a song of praise to God. It's called Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea. There's a prayer we do every week, which I'm not going to sing for you because otherwise you'll all walk out of this presentation at the end of it. But it's called the Michamocha. Every week in services, that's part of this. That's part of the Song at the Sea because we're saying, "Thank you, God, for saving us from Egypt." And then Miriam takes center stage right after that, and it says, "Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, picked up a tambourine. All the women went out to her and danced with timbrels. Miriam chanted for them, 'Sing to Adonai, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and driver he has hurled into the sea.'" What do we learn about Miriam here? This little section. What do you see about her? What?
Leader.
She's a leader. Gathered all the women together. She's a leader. What else? Say it out loud so I can hear you. She can sing and dance. She likes music. Musical. She's a musical leader. %. And so, by the way, it says that she's a prophet right there. This is the first time any woman is called a prophet in the Torah. So she's designated as a prophet, and that's an accurate translation. And they use instruments in worship. This tradition changed. Do we have anybody who goes to conservative synagogues, Orthodox synagogues here in attendance today, or grew up in conservative Orthodox synagogues, right? Okay. And what do they not allow in Orthodox and conservative synagogues on Shabbat? Does anybody know why? Yes. And correct. And what about it makes it work? I'll tell you. If you're playing the guitar and for Shabbat services, and the guitar string breaks while you're playing it, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to fix it because you're in the middle of a service. And it make you look bad if you can't go on with the service. So it's not the work of playing, it's the work of the possible repair that you would need to do. That is why musical instruments are traditionally prohibited in Shabbat services. However, in Reform Judaism, we put instruments in our services. Of course, we have Kevin, our accompanist, who's amazing. We bring in guitarists on occasion. This Friday, actually, we're having Cantor Anna Ott play guitar for us along with Kevin. It'll be a lot of fun. And, by the way, we use tambourines too. You know when? When I do Tot Shabbat, I get all the little kids behind me, and we do a Torah parade, and they all shake their tambourines while we march around the sanctuary. So that tradition continues, okay? So all the women went out and danced with her, they did so. Now, there's a very famous song, uh, written by Debbie Friedman. Anybody know who Debbie Friedman is? Who's Debbie Friedman? Famous before, you did great. Do you want to lead the rest of the presentation? You can't though. You did great. Yes, Debbie Friedman is a famous, she passed away young, actually, unfortunately. She was a very famous Reformed Jewish composer. She came out of the camp movement, and she played a lot of guitar. So she composed a lot of camp style guitar songs that are used in many synagogues. We use one song of hers every week. Anybody know? Yes. The Misha Berach healing prayer. I did not sing for you, but that you didn't. The Misha Berach healing prayer was written by Debbie Friedman, and we sing it every week. That is such a powerful prayer. I think anytime we use a different one, people say that's not the right one. Have you ever had that feeling when you hear a melody and you're like, that's not the right one, right? So that's Debbie Friedman only wrote that 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It wasn't that long ago in perspective of Judaism, but that is such a beautiful prayer and it's such a powerful moment that we do it every week in our synagogue, and it's done in synagogues across the country. She's known for that. She's composed a bunch of other songs, and one of them is known as Miriam's song. So we're gonna, you guys heard that one? We're gonna play it.
Do that.
Do it at the Women's Theater. Oh, the Tam, you got this whole thing under control. You got this. I'm gonna play it for you anyway because I decided it was time to go to the 21st century and try Google Slides. So I want to credit my daughter for that. Well, I did do the work. That's good. All right. So you can see that's a very engaging, type of music that Debbie Friedman. And by the way, the editorial school at the Hebrew Union College where I went to school was just recently renamed the Debbie Friedman School of Music in her memory. And that's a little controversial because there are a lot of different styles of Reformed Jewish music, and she's a more recent one. So some of the cantors aren't, some love it, and anyway. But it was a very special tribute to her and her influence in the Reform movement. All right. Right, so what do we learn about Miriam? That she's a leader, she's musical, that she brought the women together. She made it possible for the women to be part of this holy moment. It wasn't just about the men. The men sang and the women sang. Women had an important role in this as well. Here. Okay, Miriam wasn't perfect. Who is? Not, oh, wait a minute. Even the rabbi's not perfect. Do you believe it? All right. So a little later on in the Torah, Miriam and Moses and Aaron, we escaped Egypt. We were wandering in the desert for 40 years, the book of Numbers, and God was providing for us, but the people were not happy. They were constantly rebelling against Moses and the leadership. And then Miriam and Aaron rebelled as well. That's what they did. Verse 12, verse 1 to 3. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. So what are their complaints? What are they complaining about? Everything, yeah, but specifically, what are they complaining? You're right. What are they complaining about? Not a big fan of intermarriage, right? Okay, it's a problem we have to today. We don't need to get into that right now, but it's a continuing thing. Okay, and what about the second one? What's that? Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Hasn't the Lord spoken through us? What's their complaint? Right, why is he the big shot? Why should he be in charge? Why aren't we in charge? Look where he got us. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We're going nowhere. We've been wandering forever. And all we're eating is this manna. They actually complained about the food. Very foolish of them. In one of the complaints, they said, I want to go back to Egypt where they had leeks and fish and onions. So they were complaining. So you kind of see the point on the second one that, why should only one person have that authority, etc. God was not pleased with this rebellion, and God said to both of them, God said, look, Moses is my most trusted servant. Talk to Moses face to face, not in riddles, and Moses is who I've chosen, God basically says. Then as soon as this ends, something happens to Miriam. I'll bet you know what happens, Judy Stowski. What happens? She got leprosy. Right after this episode of rebellion, she is afflicted with leprosy, like a white scaly leprosy on her hand. Okay. Now the rabbis saw this, and she had to be quarantined. Thank you. You think I would know that after COVID? She had to be quarantined for 7 days outside of the camp, and she came back in and she was healed. But the rabbis saw a very interesting connection. They drew a connection between what happened to Miriam and gossip. They do it based on a Hebrew wordplay. What they notice is the word for gossip in Hebrew is lashon hara. It means evil tongue, basically, lashon hara. And the Hebrew word for a person who has leprosy is mitzor. They sound a little similar. Shon hara, mitzorah. So they said the reason she got leprosy is because she was a talebearer. She was gossiping. Has anybody in this room ever gossiped? Don't raise your hand. Never. Nobody's ever done that. Never. I've never done that. Nobody's ever done it. By the way, the rabbis said the problem with gossip is usually it's not that it's slander is when it's false. Gossip is when it's true. Right? So that's even a bigger problem. It's not just a question of, usually when you're spreading gossip, it's accurate. That's really that's the issue. Now, so Miriam, she wasn't perfect. She was not perfect. She denigrated Moses and spread gossip about his wife, and that was a problem. So the rabbis had a lot to say about lashon hara and gossip. They say in Leviticus 19, not go about as a talebearer among your people. That portion is from Yom Kippur afternoon. There are a number of important holy laws that are agreed in the Torah. And then we see here that in the Talmud, the rabbis compared gossip to murder. It too is irrevocable. Why are they saying that gossip is irrevocable? What are they saying? Once it's out, you can't take it back. By the way, in our world, that doesn't just come out of your mouth. Where does it come out? Social media, the phone, the 85 apps that we use, etc. Once it's out there, it's gone. It lives forever. Never put anything online you don't want everybody to read, right? In the whole world. So it's irrevocable once it comes out. You'll see on the right there, put in a piece. This is actually a sign from the Mea Sharim neighborhood in Jerusalem. Mea Sharim means 100 gates, And it's an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood in Jerusalem. It's one of the most well-known ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods. And they have a bunch of posters on the different, buildings and telephone poles. And by the way, you can see that in Williamsburg too. Go to Williamsburg, Brooklyn now, you kind of walk along, you can see the signs plastered in Yiddish, signs in Hebrew. It says, please no Lashon Hara. But when you're walking down the street, you gotta be, you'll see that sign, you'll remember to, think about what you're saying. Think about what you're saying a little bit. The rabbis also said, by the way, they noticed that the Hebrew word for word and thing is the same word. The words are things. They're real. They're not just something that comes out of our mouth and disappears. They're real and they can have an impact, right? Yeah. There's a Hasidic tale, a man who went through his community slandering the rabbi. Nobody would ever do that, right? Never. That would never happen. And notice I put a feather there. A feather there. So what happened was, according to this Hasidic tale, the man went through slandering the rabbi and spreading gossip. One day, feeling remorseful, begged the rabbi for forgiveness, said he was willing to do teshuvah, repentance. The rabbi told him to take several feather pillows, cut them open, scatter the feathers to the wind. The man did so. But when he returned to tell the rabbi that he had fulfilled his request, he was told, now go and gather all the feathers. And the man said, that's impossible. How can I possibly gather all the feathers? The rabbi said, of course it's impossible. It's also not possible once you share words of Lashon Hara, of gossip, it's not possible to bring them back. So that's a very powerful Hasidic teaching. So Miriam was a human being, wasn't perfect. Okay. And then we're going to go on to our last slide here. We learn a little bit, a little later on in Numbers, in Numbers chapter 20, we read about Miriam's passing. Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. And the very next verse basically says, the community was without water, and they joined against Moses and Aaron. So on the top there, you'll see, took a picture of a desert well, just to maybe give you a sense. We'll come back to that in a minute. But the rabbis noticed that it said Miriam died there and was buried there, and immediately the people were complaining about not having water. So the rabbis, they were imaginative. So they saw those two ideas and they said, wait a minute, Miriam had a well. And Miriam's well followed the people all through the desert. That's how they had water. And when Miriam died, her well disappeared. So has anybody heard of Miriam's well before? All right, so good. Now you go home and say, the rabbi, I learned something today. So there's a teaching that there's this concept of Miriam's well. She had a well that followed and sustained the people all through the 40 years. Maybe that's what it looked like over there. Who knows? On the top there, Miriam's well. And so this was a well of sweet water, of protection, of sustenance. So she was a prophetess. She was a miracle worker. She was able to sustain the people with water. And so now to this day, there's a new custom, and it says here at the bottom, Miriam's well followed the Israelites in the desert for 40 years. Now there's a custom today that people are doing. Of course, we have a cup of wine. Well, how many cups of wine do we have at the Seder? Four cups of wine, right? 4 is a big important number at the Seder. 4 cups of wine, 4 questions. We also have another cup at the Seder. What do we have? Elijah's cup. We got to keep an eye on that. See what happens. We open the door for him. We give him a little wine. Hopefully he'll come and and then there's another cup that people are starting to put. They're starting to put Miriam's cup. This is an example I found online. You can put, Miriam's cup. And what do you put in that cup, do you think? Water. Represent Miriam's well. So that's a nice custom to be able to put that there, to be able to explain that, and to remember Miriam. So never be a part of our ritual traditions. This is an important point about Judaism, especially in Reform Judaism. We think that our traditions can evolve. They don't have to stay exactly the same. We can add new things, meaning to our traditions, like Miriam's. We can put them in our tradition and have them enrich it. So that, my friends, is our friend Miriam. She was a prophetess, a musician, a leader. Gossiped a little. She was a great leader of our people and role model, and she sustained our people both with her music and with her literal water for the years we were in the desert. Now, does anybody have any comments about our friend Miriam as we wrap up here? Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for your attention, and it was really great to be with you all. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions?
Can we do another presentation on the other women?
Sure.
Okay, no other questions? Order.
Not about this specific, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I've heard that in the LA there's
Yes.
at least one synagogue.
Yes, I'd like to talk about that.
Two